Welcome back to the Julian J. Franco Show, a show where I bring to you people who I find to be genuine, not only in front of the camera, but behind the scenes. And today's guest is somebody who you probably already know, but if you don't, it's Rosie Rivera. And she's an inspirational speaker, a bookworm, by the way. She's a mother of three and an author of numerous books that, when you look at the reviews of her books, like the lives that she's changing and the way that people just react to her words, to her story, you're going to want to pick up her next book, which is God is Your Defender. But she's also a producer too, and she has credits ranging from Telemundo to Netflix, and that's just outstanding. But most importantly, like we already touched on, she's sharing her story to uplift the pain and create strength in anyone who has been affected by traumatic events in the past. And before we even started this interview, I was just speaking to her on how much I appreciate what she's doing, because when you're sharing your story, and especially one as intimate as hers, it's so difficult and so taxing. So I just really love that. So before we even go into the really hard and difficult aspect of it, one thing while doing my research for you, your dad was very encouraging of
Yeah,
whatever it is that you wanted to do. He was very uplifting. He didn't set limitations on your life. So now I want to give you a chance to shine. How are you bringing in that parenting style of your father to your children today?
I love that. I try and repeat what he did. I mean, my dad really, really let me know the power that was already in me and that I had a companion in all my dreams. Like I didn't have to do it alone. And I do that for my kids. Like I hear them when I ask the question because sometimes, everyone, not everyone, but most people ask their question, their kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, my conversation is a little deeper. Like, what do you like? And what do you want to do every day? And really teach them that their impact in the world is so much more important than a bank account or followers or things like that. And I just remind them constantly, like, all right, we're going to do it. And I always say we, and yes, and you can do it, and life will teach them the limitations, and I'll be there when life lets them know any limitations. But I really, really love to hear my kids when I ask the question, what do you want to do with your life?
That's such a good point. And whatever it is that you're doing, it takes more energy, it takes more focus. And that's why a lot of parents don't do that, right? It's just like they just want to feed their children, put them in the room, and then repeat that cycle. So what would you say a lot of parents today are just doing wrong that they don't necessarily even know that they're doing wrong? They just think, "Hey, I'm paying the bills, they're fed, they got clothes on their back," because that's how I grew up. It's just like
Yeah.
that's them showing you love, right?
Right, definitely. It depends on, my dad's love language was providing, was service, right? So I know that now. But I think sometimes we don't know that we're not listening to what they truly care about at every age. When we ask questions, we do it because we know we should, but I don't think we're really looking at them in the eye. We're not getting, like, my son is 4, so I will get on to eye level with him or lift him up so that he knows he's not a little person in this house. He's not a kid. He's at value. So I hear his opinion, and I try and help him communicate it. But sometimes it comes out screaming, and the screaming gets on my nerves. But I always try and hear, like, what is he really trying to communicate? Because I want to give that value. So I teach my children now, whether they're 4 or 8 or 18, that I listen to them. Because if I can listen to them about Dora for 8 hours or for hours, or who they ate lunch with, and remember their names, like, oh, it was Brianna. Oh, tell her I said hi. Then they'll know I'm genuinely interested in them, and not only things that concern me. And I don't think we treat our kids like valuable people in the family. It is either a financial burden or someone I have to take care of, or whatever it can be. And I think when you show them that value, rather than just telling them you're so valuable, we'll show them. And that means that their voice matters in the home.
I think we could stop the interview right here. You already hit like a home run. Like, no, seriously, I'm so serious because this is so important. And I love when you said, my 4-year-old, I get down to his level. So
Mhm.
many times when it comes to children, I don't have children, but I'm fascinated with the thought of them because I want them. I want a family of my own. And I think that's like the greatest luxury that anyone could ever have. And I also think it's a need. But we look at children as like their livestock. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's some of my sheep, that's some of my cow, and I got to do this. And like you
It used
said,
to be. I mean, at
yeah.
least in Mexico, you had kids. They didn't even have to finish. That's what my dad was. My dad was pulled out in the seventh grade to be like, okay, now you got to work. And we were, and maybe we still are in different ways.
In many different ways, but what you're doing is you're not saying, look, I own you because I'm your mother. You got to do whatever it is that I tell you to do. Like you said, life is going to be complex enough. It's going to restrict them enough. It's going to bring them down enough. You don't want to be a part of that. And the reason I'm really honing in on this point, because literally, because people don't do what you're doing to your children, that's why they grow up to be screwed up. And what I mean by that is they don't feel heard, they don't feel listened to. So guess what? They go find it in other places. So the fact that you're doing that, I just want to, pat you on the back when it comes to that. Now, the last question regarding your children, what's like the last fun thing that you guys did together?
We camped yesterday, the day before yesterday. It was like their last Saturday and Sunday. So we went camping, and we don't have like a campground. I'm not there yet because then it'll be glamping. So we did the front yard, and my husband put up a tent and he put up a screen, and we watched movies and played loteria, and they had a blast, and it was in our front yard. So even with like financial time, COVID, travel, like I get it. I get it. We go through the same thing too. We still had a blast. They don't know. They don't know they're missing out on like a camping adventure. They love that their parents slept on the floor in the front yard, and they were just fascinated. My 18-year-old didn't sleep with us anymore. She doesn't, but she's loving sleeping outside with her friends. So, and they don't even make it through the night. I'm like, I can't believe you. They come in at 10 p.m. Like, no, stay out there. So I scared the heck out of them. I snuck up and I was like making noises, and I just like I made a big noise. I loved it. They were scared. I just had such a blast. I don't know if they had fun, but I had fun.
I don't know what it is, but my mother, like when we would be watching movies growing up, right? We're sitting in the living room. She'd always pick up her slipper, her chancleta, and she'll throw it at me. And it'll always scare the crap out of me. And I didn't like it, but she'd laugh her face off. And it's just something about parents scaring their children. And especially when it comes to camping, like, yeah, me camping, any type of bear or just any animals, I'm over it. I'm going right back in the house. So wow, wow, good.
If we can't scare our kids, then what's the fun of it? I have
Yeah.
to be able to at least like
Yeah.
like that. Just that, it's so hilarious to me.
No, there has to be some perks to it.
Story though, I had a great time. I just had like a huge victory yesterday with my son. He's 4, and he has this plaything of like hitting girls on the butt, and because of the sexual abuse that I went through in my life and all this stuff, I tell him at 4 years old, ask for consent. You have to ask. People don't like that, and you think it's too early. Like he doesn't get it. So the other day he hugged me, and we were just hugging normally, and he's like, "Mommy, is it okay if when I hug we touch here?" Like, oh, I loved it. I'm like, you asked for consent. I was so proud of him. And those are victories to me, because it's something that he can learn at 4. We don't have to start teaching our sons consent at 15 when it may be too late. And I just think just going back to what we were talking about, like really talking and listening to our kids, 1 through 8, we have the biggest influence on them. From 1-year-old to 8. After 8, their influence may be their friends, and then after that, it's celebrities. So just the influence that you have on your kids, really, really appreciate it. I'm, my daughter just turned 8, and I thought, okay, that means by 9, right? So, or I'm going to extend it, and I'm really, really happy to be able to be a mom, and that's why I work so much on my own mental health, because I don't want to ruin them. Right now when you said, I'm like, I don't want them to be in, not that counseling is bad. It's great. And I pray that they go, but what if they're like, it was my mom? And, I'm trying to avoid as many of those.
Yeah, but parents like yourself that are super aware and intentional with not only your own healing, but with being intentional parent, those children are going to do good. If anything, they're going to be sick and tired of getting like these sermons for everything, because you'll go above and beyond to make sure that they really know. But at an early age, and I'm proud what you did with your son, they're just learning at an early age, hey, I'm important, I'm valuable. And also people's bodies aren't just minds to be slapping. Like maybe I should ask. Like that's all good. Like you know what I mean? It's never too early. And I love that point. That's why so many children are screwed up because we go, oh, it's too early, or he or she is too young, so we can argue in front of them, or they're too young.
Mhm.
Just tell them to shut up and close the door behind them. They're too young. They don't know, but they do know. Like you said, the most formative years are those young years. So, you know, like I literally don't even want to talk about your past now. I just want to keep talking about friendly children and playing tag. But you know, going to those really early years and you going through, you know, that sexual abuse, like that's it's horrible for anybody, and I have so many questions, not about that situation in general, but just like the residue that that leaves on somebody, because that to me is like, yeah, that's crazy. But like even me, Rosie, if I see, I tell my friends, don't send me any news, don't send me any people fighting, don't send me this, don't send me that, because if I see that, you get that innate, you like you want to vomit. It just it makes you feel
Yeah,
nauseous when you see somebody being abused or hurt, or for what? For what? But now when I'm trying to sleep, I can't sleep. And that's
yeah.
me watching a video. Imagine you going through something like that. Like that's where I go with it. So before we even go into the residue of that, it's I just wanted to ask you from your perspective, if there's a male, and for the people listening who don't know, you just tell them really quickly for that for them who don't know what happened to you.
My sister's first husband started sexually abusing me when I was 8. And so, I mean, I had known him my whole life. I trusted him. There was no reason not to want to obey him. I was taught to obey adults. He was like a brother to me. And he told us we were playing a love game. So that I know love and I know games. That it was easy. I was 8 and I trusted him. And I didn't even understand I was being sexually abused until a year later. I knew the feelings, like this is weird. This I shouldn't be doing this. I don't know why. It's very secretive. Like so but I didn't have a concept because I didn't know what sex was. We didn't talk about it. It was the 80s and it didn't come out. There wasn't that many outlets. And whenever anyone kissed on TV, we'd be told to close our eyes. It was just the way things were back then. And when I did find out at 9 in sex ed, I remember clearly, I was so upset and disgusted. And I felt so fooled. It got me, just so mad that I threw up. I threw up in class of anger. And I one of the residues is that anger, that my anger was valid. Of course it was valid. And I think that social worker that met up with us when I was 16 after I finally spoke up, and she just validated that anger. I felt so good because everyone was like, why is she so upset? Why is she so moody? Like, oh, that's just Rosie. But the residue was living in that anger. And I am now free of it. But for a long time, living in that anger kind of became like tar inside of me that was just spreading everywhere.
Yeah, and that validation that you get from an adult authority figure can literally release so much, because you end up feeling like, yeah, like you're crazy or you're overthinking something. And at that age, you don't have the emotional intelligence to even know the difference between anger, shame, guilt. Like it's just so that's so much. So here's the question that I wanted to ask you just when I was going over your story, because nobody's going to think about it as much as you have. I said,
Mhm.
why do you think a guy like him that was married, had a wife, right? Had a wife, like had a wife, had children of his own or whatnot, to somebody within the family who's also much younger? And I'm asking a bigger question here too. Here it is. Why do grown men, because in this day and culture, you're hearing a lot about this now, right? Like grown adults going after young children. Number one, why do people do that? Especially, I'm just confused when you have a family, right? Like I can never understand it. I can never condone it. But
Yeah.
if it's a lonely man who's mentally ill and he lives in a forest by himself in a cave and he goes and sees a little girl and says, oh, she's pretty, let me go do something. I still can't understand it. But at least I'm more receptive to saying, well, that it is what it is. It happened. But when it comes to somebody who is already in a family, how would they do that? And number two, you're a family member. Don't they realize that this person is going to grow up and remember this? And me saying, I'm going to kill her sister and her family if she tells, it's not going to last. Like, why do you think people just do that? Why or how?
In general, I don't know why. I mean, I think it's darkness and we can't understand it. So when you say like I can't fathom it, I get you. But in my situation, because I have thought about it a lot and revisited, I noticed that he would sexually abuse me when he was mad at my sister. So there was a lot of DV going on. There was arguing. We were used to it. It was that bad, So and sometimes it was like punching or breaking a broom on his back. Both of them were guilty of it. So as long as we knew like no one was bleeding, like, okay, that's what they do. But when she was either asleep or would step out, say to the grocery store, and she trusted him, she knew that they were mad at each other, but she would never think he'd hurt the girls. That's when he'd come look for me. So I became scared of the violence, not only for her, but oh no, now he's going to come find me. So I think it was a power trip. I think it was indirectly hurting my sister. I think it was the forbidden, like I am so powerful, or I feel so small next to someone else that I will feel great or powerful, because I don't think it's merely sexual. Sexual pleasure can come in different ways, So I think for him specifically, it was a huge power control. And I was 8. And so he got that. So now I am aware of that, and I can appreciate power, the power God has given me, the power that I have in my job, with my voice, with my husband, the influence that I have. So I am very aware of never abusing power, because abuse can come politically, sexually, financially, in so many ways, anywhere where there's power. And I like that I learned that lesson. But for him, that's what I think the issue was, or something in there.
Oh, that is fascinating. And I followed it completely. When you said that, that made total sense to me. It's also a power that comes with that. It's like I'm lacking a power with my spouse, but I can get it here. This person I have total control over. And that power is not just a physical power, it's like a mental power. It's a spiritual power that they have over you, because they know how it affects you. They see it in your eyes. So yeah, that's all really well put on your part. Now, you say that you started drinking at 13 and then drugs at 16 and then like really heavy at around 18. And what I love now is you say, when you went back, after you stepped away from it, you went back to the drinking a bit, but you're like, it can't, it no longer numbs what I know God can heal. And when I heard that, I said, dang, okay, that a lot of people are gonna get that as a tattoo. Now, but I have to ask, like 13 drinking, how does that work? Like, was it because, your family was influential and there were a lot of parties that there were just alcohol like around and you were just like, well, everybody else is doing it. How did that work?
Yeah, it's the house parties that our parents are having fun, and we're safe, right? We're in our room or we're hanging out. It's those house parties where you think, at least it's at my house. And I'm glad our parents were being safe, and they were home. They weren't drinking and driving. But I would, sneak in a drink whenever I could. It was that we never talked about it. We didn't talk about drinking. And so I didn't know that I was nowhere near the maturity level to be able to know how and when, and to drink, wisely. And I just wanted to hurt myself, really. At 13, I was already hating myself. So I heard stories of like, hey, your great great uncle, I don't know, got ill from his liver from drinking so much. Oh, okay, I'll do that, because it's technically not suicide. I'll just kind of kill myself slowly. So anything that I would hear that was bad for me, I would do as a way of like self-punishing.
See, that's fascinating. And by that time, your siblings and your father, they're already in the limelight. So so that's also a thing too. They can't really notice maybe what you're doing or what you're really going through, or it's easy to ignore it because I'm sure as well, when you're in the entertainment industry, you're good at putting on a smile, you know,
I
and
was so
you
good
yeah,
at hiding behind my good grades. You know,
a straight A student. I remember, yeah.
yeah, I was smart, and I could hide so well, or I had such a great like wall of anger that if anyone ever tried to even speak to me, ask me a question, I just shoot out with anger.
Well,
And I noticed that a lot of people are like don't want to face it. They don't want confrontation. So most people will back off if you just act angry. And I noticed that, like, I can sometimes even tell when people have like similar issues to me, when I'm just like, she's just angry, and but I can see her eyes aren't angry, she just wants me to back off. So I know when not to. Like, okay, well, I'm not afraid of your anger, so, and because I used to do that. So with my anger, I pushed away so many people that loved me. And it ended up hurting me the most, but it really damaged a lot of my relationships.
That's so fascinating that you say that because it's the truth. We find that as a barrier to, to not have to be vulnerable. I don't want to have to talk about this. I don't have to go through this, but I know if I'm just going to be a little feisty, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, she's crazy. Let me back away. So I definitely understand that. And you also speak to being a bookworm and reading being one of your coping mechanisms. So what books were you reading when you were young? Like books or comic books? What was it?
I started with the Babysitters Club. I mean, I
Oh,
literally remember Claudia from New York, and she loved fashion. And that's where I would go. In those moments, I would just close my eyes and pretend I was someone else, like someone else's life. So I would read as like research to who I'm going to pretend to be next time, if ever I'm in a situation where I got to get away. And then by 13, I was reading like Gone with the Wind and Great Expectations. I love that book. I just would read anything that would take me away from my reality. Usually it's fiction. I love the classics. I love biographies. Now I love biographies because I like to learn other people's victories and lessons from their life. But that's what I would do. And I never even thought of writing a book. It was like, I can't do this, but there's this little girl dream of like, but wouldn't it be cool? All those things inside of your head that you say, wouldn't it be cool if I, God is so good. Those dreams have come true. And they were just like, not even prayers, not even wishes. It would just be like, man, I love to read. I wish I could do this, or it would be cool to do this. And I'm doing all of that now.
oh yeah, we see it, and we love it. And like I said, doing the research for the show, just going through your books, multiple. What is it? Five, I think.
Yes. Yes. It's five. I've three with my name on them, and I've ghost written two.
And you're gonna ghostwrite another one. I'm gonna make a book somehow. I don't know, but
Prophetic. Yes,
yeah.
I'm actually working on a children's book right now for with someone else.
You see, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's and when you get them young like that, you literally change the world. Everybody goes, "Oh, that's how you change the world, change the world." And we hear change the world so much that it means nothing to us. Like it just, yeah, change the world. Yeah, right. But literally, you sparking something new in a young person's mind shifts everything. So, okay, God is your defender. Now, there's so much that I need to ask about it. But before we talk about this book, you have to give me one of your favorite books that's not you haven't written or have any association with. But what's one of your favorite books? If I'm gonna put you in a little island for 3 months by yourself, no kids, your vacation time, what's the only book that you're gonna take with you? And it can't be the Bible, because I know you'll say that too.
East, East of Eden. I just read it. I'm so late on it. East of Eden is by Steinbeck, and he like makes a fictional story out of Cain and Abel. And I was just blown away. And I'm like, why am I so late on this book? But East of Eden has a lot of like life lessons while being really interesting. And I really saw myself in it. Not the good stuff either, but like, whoa, I do that. Or I think like that. Or, ooh, I would have done that. And so at 39, I read it. And if I was on an island for 3 months, I'd read it again.
That'd be your book. Okay. Okay. Good. Good. I've never heard of it, but I'm always curious of what people like you who are authors who literally spend so much time writing words. When it comes to when you're reading literature, what do you find to be amazing and outstanding? So when I get a recommendation from an author, I always want to follow up on that. Now, you know what? Before we even go into the book, two more questions.
Okay.
When it came to your childhood, growing up in the spotlight, so to speak, you say that you were always running from cameras, but I always like to get the opposite side. What was one of the pros of being from like a family that has money, that has resources? What was something that, other than the parties, what was something else that you're like, I don't mind this?
The cars. My dad,
Ooh.
yeah, my dad has, now I appreciate it, but I wanted a like a 4-cylinder and he wanted like a BMW, and then he got me a Range Rover. I've driven everything. I mean, I've been in a Rolls Royce because my sister had one, but just the cars, really, I didn't even realize how much I liked cars until now. You're shopping for your own car. You're like, ooh, I don't know if I can afford that same thing right now on my husband and my budget. So the cars, and when you walk into a place, I don't know, especially restaurants, and they treat you so well, like, wow, I don't use my name, I refuse. But when they would recognize my face, they'd be like, hey, come here. And just really like that banquet where you're like, wow, I don't know, something about restaurants and walking in and them treating you like someone important, because it was so opposite to what I was getting like at school. I was like the chubby girl and the immigrant, parent girl and the poor girl for so long. I was just like the reject that by the time I grew up a little bit, you drive up in a nice car and they welcome you. They want to be with you. They want to speak to you. It would sometimes warp me of like, what world am I in right now? Like, I'm still that chubby girl from middle school. I felt like it, but they saw me differently.
I love that you mentioned that. And in a previous interview, you talked about, you didn't want to get your child like a Z28 Camaro because they couldn't handle the power at that early age. So it has to be, everything is by steps. But you're talking to a guy who loves cars. So what's your favorite car? Like what's the car that just like,
Okay,
what, this
you're
is
gonna
it?
laugh because my husband laughed, but I went to a car show. I was about 16, 17, and I don't even know how to pronounce it, an Ashton Martin.
Aston Martin. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, I sat in one. They don't even make, I don't even know how to drive like stick. So I don't, but in my head one day, and he will still tell me, and he laughed at me at first, but I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, I'll learn to drive it. And that's a dream car. If I'm going to dream, if you're telling me to dream, I'm going to dream big, like,
Amen.
so it's a fast car. And by then my kids will be grown and I can, speed down. I don't know, but I just think they're such gorgeous cars.
I love that. And that's the thing about cars. It's not all explainable. Like it's just you get that feeling. You're like, ooh, that's for me. That's my
The
car.
power, I don't know, get me the freedom, the
Right.
financial freedom by then to be able to splurge on something like that. So yeah, that's what I drive. Right now, I want a Tesla. Like right now, that's my like next car, but eventually that's what it'll be.
What do you want? Like the SUV one or the regular sedan? Okay, good,
I
good.
want the SUV one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you could flex with the doors coming up. I
Yes.
see you. I see you.
Exactly.
So, this is something that's going to help with context with your new book, because when people realize you went through, being poor, being rich, feeling seen, feeling unseen, like it just really helps people find you more relatable,
Yeah.
and it just goes, okay, wow. And then even the fact that you opened up and you said like you were addicted to porn at a time, to me, when other people, they could just read that or hear whatever. I go, wait, what? How could you be addicted to something like that? Because I thought she'd be afraid of it. So I wanted to ask you on that, like how did that start, and also how did you kind of release yourself from it?
It was the worst type of addiction because I don't know, my body called out for something that I hated. So sometimes the drinking can be fun or, but this wasn't fun. It felt like a need. And I was 10, 11. So I was it was so hard to go through it. My body would literally, the way as a grown woman, now you're like, oh, okay, need some time. I would go through that at 10 and I didn't understand it. I was just, so I would hate myself so much after it, but I didn't know how to control it, how to handle it. And so the word says, don't wake up love before it's time. I also feel like that's physical. Like, don't wake up a woman or a man's sexual desire before it's time. It's not something that you can just close up. And, I tell my daughter, like, hey, you start having sex too early, it's really hard to stop. It takes some Holy Spirit and to really stop. It's, sometimes we open that door too soon. So at 8, no, not at 8, at about 10, 11, there was Playboy on TV, and it was like, we didn't even have the channel. It was just the noise, or, it was grainy, and I would just try and watch it. Or my brothers had magazines, and it was something that I thought my body needed. And then after, I would just cry and be disgusted with myself. And I'd find myself there a month or 2 months later. And then as I grew up and it grew out of control, it was every day, several times a day. And I noticed, for me, if the enemy, or if myself, or if something is going on in my life and I'm really angry, especially with my husband, my mind will want to go back there. So it's not like, oh, it's gone and you'll never want it again. I mean, it is now as a grown woman, and it's pleasure. So if I'm mad at my husband, it's crazy, I will tell him, I feel like doing this. So even though we're mad, do you want me to do that, or do you want to help me? Because I need you to know, I need you to help me. He gives me, I have accountability with him, and he's been amazing at understanding, and he never like puts me down or makes me feel dirty. On the contrary, he talks about it with me and everything, but it's still something that, if I allow, can still get out of control now. So it's not like, oh, I've conquered it and I don't want it anymore. It's just, I've just realized it's when you're angry. So I think as I grew up and I got angrier and angrier, it was my go-to. It was that thing of like letting out all the gas that was filling in the Coke. You move it. I just felt like I was about to explode. So I needed some release. For me, it was anger, and there was pleasure in it, because my body at 8 years old didn't understand that it was my brother-in-law, didn't understand that your body just knows it feels good, even though your mind is completely disgusted by it.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love the fact that you even say it's even just like with inner health or healing or recovery, you never just wake up one day and go, oh, I'm the Rosie I need to be and want to be, and I don't have to do no more work. I don't have to try. It's like, no, I'm still going to get triggered. And the fact that you're like, hey, hubby, by the way, when I feel this way, this is what I need. This is what I don't need. Can you help me? You're asking for help. Like, you know what I mean? Which is always fantastic. Now, I think you tell me when the tipping point was, but I think it was like, you said something about taking about 40 Tylenol pills and being a little tipsy, and then going out in Cali, and you were just like, I'm done. What, before you picked up the Tylenol, what were you really thinking? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because it's easy to say, oh, I just want to go, but there has to be something that you just go, this time I'm for real.
I was thinking that sex was a battle I wasn't going to be able to beat. I felt chased down by sex continuously, whether it was molestation or rape, date rape at 15, or assault, sexual assault at 16, and then a continuous sexual addiction like porn. I thought, I'm not going to beat it, and if I'm not going to beat it, then I want to rest from it. So my husband at that time, he's a different one, had raped me, and he had just verbally hurt me so deeply all day, for days and days and days, and then wanting to be intimate with me. I didn't want to. So I thought I had the power, and I do, to say no. And he didn't take the no. So he raped me and threw me out the room, and we were at a hotel room. So then I go, and my mind is like, oh, I'll go get the key from the front desk. And the owner thought I was a prostitute. And so I go back, and I take this label and I put it on. He doesn't know me. I don't know him. I don't know why. I was so used to just receiving what people said about me because of how low I felt, or I didn't know my identity. And I thought, my dad and I used to talk about being an astronaut and a lawyer and the Supreme Justice of the, and a justice in the Supreme Court. And no, I'm sitting here and I'm a prostitute. I had never sold my body. I gave it away. I don't know which is worse, I just didn't value myself. And I thought, oh, but I'm like a prostitute. So I should just die because sex is beating me. And I'm tired of the fight. I'm tired of fighting it. And I was ready to go. And that's what I was kind of yelling at God, like, just take me. I might go to hell, but please, do something with my life because I'm tired of living it. It's that battle. I had post-traumatic stress disorder because of the long emotional battle against sex.
Of course, anybody would have PTSD because of that. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think you're a human if you can go through anything that crazy and not struggle with it, not fight with it. And that's literally your body, your brain, your spirit telling you, hey, don't ever get into that situation again. And it's a cruel reminder, right? Like sometimes like we're like, okay, but can you do it in the gentle way or not right before I'm trying to fall asleep? Like it's difficult. And I totally get that. But that's why, like, okay, when people say, oh, you have to go through, traumatic events and this and that in order to see your true potential, or they do that with some certain artists too, right? Like, oh, if you get your heart broken really bad, then you'll come out with good music and a good song.
Yeah.
There's truth to it, but there's also, another side where it's like, I don't have to go through what Rosie went through, but I can read her book. You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
why I'm just so glad to just sing your book's title over and over and over, because I really think this is something that so many people in different ways. That's why I said traumatic events for your intro and not just sexual abuse, because
Mm-hmm.
there's so many people who went through stuff and they hate that person. They hate that person who did whatever. It could be a work thing. It could be a personal thing. It could be whatever, everything in between. Literally a stranger did something to them. It could be anything. And they live with the, as you say, like that eye for eye thing, or they want revenge consistently and constantly. What's your greatest bit of advice if you're sitting with that person who's like, yeah, Rosie, but you don't understand, because if you were me, you'd kill him or you'd kill her, or you do, like, they literally, when they say those words, they don't mean it like, oh, I'm going to kill him. Like they really want to end that person's life, because not only have they damaged their own life, but the potential that they can damage other people's lives. Right. And especially when people see, in your case was a bit different because you saw him getting arrested. With
Mm-hmm.
other people, there's people who do major damage to them, and when you check their IG, they're on a boat. You know what I mean? Or they're driving that Aston Martin, and you're like, what the heck? How are they doing so good? And yet they did this to me. What do you tell that person who's literally bitter, who's like, they're going to explode any second?
How long will you allow them to have this power over you? I mean, the choice is yours. You get to dictate how long this person has power over you, whether it's physical or psychological. I mean, I get you. I hated him for 18 years, thought of him every single day, had 100 ways that I could kill him without people finding out, and then kill myself. I get it. I just got tired. I just wanted to live my life. I wanted to get to know Rosie, minus the anger, minus the bitterness. I wanted to get to know her. And now, after forgiving him and just leaving it up into God's hands, I'm getting to know her, and I like her. My kids are getting to know her, and I could see the difference in my 18-year-old and in my 7-year-old. And my 18-year-old, I was an okay mom. I wasn't that good. I wasn't, because I wasn't present mentally. I was thinking so much of him that I wasn't as present. And my 18-year-old now says, I'm glad that my younger siblings have a better mom. And one, I'm glad she can say that to me without being scared. And two, when I asked her why, what do you mean? She said, you were always angry. I mean, I didn't physically abuse her. There was no abuse there. She said, but I was still scared of you. Because if you could be that mad at someone else, that could have easily transferred to me. So I saw that she was more shy. She was quiet. She's obedient to a fault. Like, she's not adventurous. And my 8-year-old, who has a healed mommy, who knows that I do get upset, but I'm not angry. I'm not always living in my anger. she's free. She's free to be herself. So I would tell them, how long are you going to let them have power over you? And the rewards that you will have are exponential, because I know you think he's going to get off free. He doesn't deserve it. He probably doesn't. And I don't know what's going to happen to him or her, but the rewards are literally exponential for you right now. The peace you will have, the power you will take back, and what your kids will receive. You can't even imagine it, because I did not imagine that my 18-year-old and I would be able to have such a mind-blowing conversation about anger, and how I am a better mommy now, a better wife. It's just me. I'm a better me. I can be alone in my presence because there's no anger and bitterness that's stopping me from enjoying myself.
Wow. 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 That was beautiful. And it makes me happy to know that, you're an influencer, because guess what? There's so many influencers out there, but where's their heart? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And your heart is in the right place. And I just love what you're doing. Like, checking out all your YouTube videos, and you're consistent, dropping. Like, you're putting, yeah, you work.
You did
Yeah.
have done the best research. I do 2 or 3 interviews a week, and I have never received like such great research. Thank God I've had great people that have read the book and they love it, and we had great conversation. But by far, I'm just like, he really I think he follows me. I'm gonna
Yeah.
follow you back. I'm gonna
Thank
go
you.
back.
Thank you. So at this point, it's just like, you're a person who's done so much good. And if you're gonna give me some of your time, I'm gonna make sure that I make it worth it. You know what I mean? Not only
Appreciate
for the listeners, obviously, that's why we build this beautiful audience. And for those of you who come back every week, I appreciate you so much. And they know that. They already know that. That's why they're here. But it's for you to know that too. And so that's it. God is your defender, learning to stand after life has knocked you down. And really, if you want to learn how to just bounce back faster, and Rosie's all about her peace. Like, she's like, I want my peace. And if you want to
Someone
learn
is taking it. Yep.
exactly. So
Mm-mm.
you're hearing this, please go get that book. And literally years and years and years of your life, you're distilling it into this book. You know what I mean? Like, people are literally silly if they don't go get the book. But if you have to say, I have one more section of like round of questions, but it's fill in the blank for you. So it's really quick and really fun. You'll enjoy that. But if you had to say one more thing to that person's standing in your favorite place, Barnes and Nobles, and they're like, should I really get that book? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that when they learn to allow God to be their defender, and they heal, and they focus on their healing, it will transform their life. I truly believe that certain parts of this book, by the Holy Spirit, will transform your life. You are worth the work.
Amen. Amen. And there's something like when you're in somebody's presence and energy, and Rosie, literally through a laptop screen, I'm already like, she's got it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, she's got it. So fantastic. Okay. Fill in the blank section. This is your last section. Let's go. A great home begins with.
Music,
Ooh, nice, nice. Okay. Being a great friend starts with.
honesty,
I am very proud of.
my conversations with my children.
Excellent. My biggest turnoff in a relationship is.
Boy,
No.
uh, procrastination.
I hear you. Your last fill in the blank is humans have an incredible ability to.
Oof. Make up stories, like make up fake stories in their mind.
The rumors and this and that. And then now, Rosie, your very last question. Okay. This is your last day on earth, and you could have any meal in the world,
Oh,
anything. What did you put on that plate? Give it to me. Let's go.
oh my Lord. I'm having